Mike Francesa from WFAN in New York City joining me here on the program. How are you, Mike?
I'm fine, Rich. Thank you. Thanks for the nice words. And yeah, it was one of those days that you like being on the air. I mean, those are what you'll miss, or I'll miss. That forum is special, and when you have those days where everyone's listening and you know the city's listening, it was one of those days yesterday. They don't come along that often, but when they are, they're very interesting, and they're a lot of fun. They really are. And yesterday was one of them. Right in the middle of the show, it was kind of very much a surprising turn of events. It really was.
Well, I mean, walking through the process, this is so un-Giant-like, Mike. I don't understand how this happened. A few weeks ago, I said on this show here there was no way the Giants, the Maras and the Tishes, would ever let Ben McAdoo decide how to script Eli Manning's final days with the Giants. And it seems like that's what they're doing, Mike.
Well, this is so un-Giant-like on so many levels. First of all, the credo of Wellington Mara was always that he would reserve judgment on a season until it was over. And his idea of a good season was a season where you played the last game for something. Now, that was not going to be the case this year. But what was going to be important was they have all their division rivals, all their storied opponents coming into their building in the final weeks of this season, the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Redskins on New Year's Eve, and how this team would compete and how much pride it would show and how much and how many would be there would really tell the decision for the owner of what he should do going forward. That was all blown up yesterday, and I did not first heard the news because the news was relayed to me very differently than it turned out to be. The first news was they were going to play both quarterbacks, and they were going to especially look at Webb, who they talk about liking, but they haven't had a lot of work with him. And that was the idea for the process for the last weeks, which was still not going to be seen as a favorable move, but very different than what I heard minutes later when McAdoo said that this gave his team the best chance of winning. And then that just made everything completely different. That was absolutely the theater of the absurd. Now the best chance you have to win is with Eli on the bench and Geno Smith playing in a week where you're not even playing the youngster. He's not even dressing this week. And now Geno Smith, Eli had been told, you'll play to protect the streak, but then Geno will play. Well, wait a second. How can you tell me you're trying to win a game if you're already deciding you're playing multiple quarterbacks in a game that counts? I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing. And to me, trying to wonder what the McAdoo motivation is here was, I believe that he and Reese decided we need more mobility, even though Geno is not an overly mobile quarterback. He is a pocket quarterback and a bad one. The other thing is I think they want to send a message that they're looking to next year, that maybe they can push the talk to next year and the vision of next year that maybe they see next year. But none of that is going to work. But the most shocking part of this all, Rich, has been that according to McAdoo, and I can't verify this yet, that John Mara signed off on this, which is the most shocking piece to this whole puzzle, that they would treat Eli Manning, who was one of the storied, iconic figures in the history of their franchise, a two-time Super Bowl MVP, and one of the best guys and humble teammates you would ever have, a defined leader and toughest guy you could ever have at the position, to treat him this way, if this is his final days with the franchise, is absolutely not only un-Giant-like, it's unreasonable and intolerable.
And he's a Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner. I mean, we could go all and all about the Eli Manning resume.
He's as good as it gets. He's as good as it gets. Everything this league stands for, you want Eli Manning out in front of the franchise, the league. He has never had a bad day. He has always put his team first. He's always, and I've given him, I talk to Eli every week. He's on my show every Monday. I have given Eli 1,000 times to bury this coach. I've teed it up for him. I have teed it up for him. All he had to do was hit it down the fairway. He has not one time ever taken the opportunity or even a little bit made a snide comment about this guy. And he could have 100 times. He has had this coach's back. He has had his general manager's back. He has had his teammates back when they've dropped balls, when they don't show up, when they don't play hard. He has never thrown a guy on that team under the bus, and they treat him this way. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen.
And then, to act as if the entire New York City metropolitan area hasn't had a front row seat to Geno Smith's attempts at being a starting quarterback in this league.
It's unbelievable. You're replacing him with Geno Smith. You would have been better off if it had been the youngster. If it had been Webb, you could have at least sold it to some of the fans. But you're going to tell me that your plan to win this week out on the coast against the Raiders and in the weeks to come against the Eagles and the Cowboys, etc., is to play Geno Smith over Eli Manning? I mean, who's going to buy that?
And that's why I guess it circles back to how John Mara would give the big blue check mark to something like this, because just to circle back to how we started this conversation, Mike Francesa here on the Rich Eisen Show, that you said that the Wellington Mara hallmark was never evaluate in real time, evaluate at the end of the season. That is the exact press release that the Giants put out just a couple of weeks ago, saying we are not going to go in real time here in this Twitterverse 21st century about what Ben McAdoo's doing, what Jerry Reese is doing. And then, so what could it possibly be that John Mara weighed that the contractual obligation to the general manager and the coach to let them decide who the 53 man is on game day, and then in general that has to take precedence over overruling them for Eli Manning? Could that be it, Mike?
I think, Rich, I can't explain it because it doesn't make any sense, and it is completely un-Mara-like, okay, and un-Giant-like, as we know. And we always give the Giants the benefit of the doubt on these because they have been such a classy, storied franchise, and they are held, as you know, in such high esteem. I mean, in our town, the Yankees and the Giants are held in complete high esteem compared to all the other teams about most of the time. I mean, they make mistakes, but most of the time doing things correctly. I mean, there have been moments like when they wouldn't pay Bavaro, which I went nuts about, and Wellington Mara called me and said, I will correct that. I mean, so I don't want to hear you yell about it again, but I will correct that is what he told me. And he did. He paid him. Stuff like that. But listen, they all slip up. George slipped up, but still, they've always been known to do things the right way. But this is so atypical for them. And all I can say is that John decided to let these guys hang themselves. I mean, maybe that's what we're looking at. Maybe he needs to sell a decision to Tisch. I don't know. Maybe that's part of this. I don't know. I know they differed on Coughlin. I know that John really was in Coughlin's corner and Tisch wasn't. So, I mean, maybe there's something there with McAdoo. I don't know that, though. There could be a split. They've had some splits in recent years. So, I mean, maybe that's it. Or maybe John is so hung up now on getting Goodell's contract straightened away and worried about league matters where he is a pivotal figure. Maybe he's taking his eye off the Giant ball right now. I mean, they have meetings today in the city. They're dealing with Jerry. They're dealing with the compensation committee, of which John is one of the six. And John, let's be honest, John and Rooney and Blank are the three guys. They are the wind beneath Goodell's wings, all right? We all know that. They are the three guys who are the most pro-Goodell. So maybe that's what he's worried about right now. He's not worried about his own mess. He's worried about the league mess, and the league has a mess on its hands for the first time in its life. It has that I can remember in my life with the league. The league has a mess on its hands.
So you think he winds up in Jacksonville, maybe, Eli, next year? What do you think for him? Our poll question today is where you think he winds up.
Listen, I think Tom Coughlin holds him in incredibly high esteem. First of all, let me say this. I am completely and Eli has not been great this year. He's heard footsteps. He has clearly tried to get rid of the ball way too early too many times. But he also has been the victim of incredible drops, bad route running, and an incredibly poor offensive line. Eli, he's a very good thrower of the deep ball, and that's what he should be doing. Eli's not a high percentage guy. He's a home run hitter. That's what he's always been. He's a big playmaker. He's a big game maker, and he's a home run hitter. That's what he is. He isn't a guy who's going to dink and dunk you to 75%. That's not who he is. He's a guy who's going to throw interceptions, but he's a guy who's going to win the big game, and he's always been great in big games, and he's always been great late in games. That is his M.O. He would be perfect on a team like Jacksonville that just needs a quarterback, it couldn't be a better fit. That's all that team's missing is an Eli Manning, and I think Eli Manning has plenty of football in him. I think he's going to be a young 37. He's young mentally. He's young physically. He's never been hurt. I think he's got a lot of football left in him. I don't think this is the last chapter at all for him. And you know what? I wish the Giants would have released him. Now, it's very hard to go another team in season, but that could have worked, and I think it would have been a lot of fun to watch because right now they have problems with Bortles. That would have been the perfect fit. With a running game, with a defense, that could have been fun to watch. It really could.
I guess to bring it all full circle, that's why, with what you're saying, obviously Eli is part of the 2-9. There's no question about that, Mike.
No question.
But so that's why you could say we're going to this kid from Cal. We need to see what we've got to see if we are, the reality is we're going to pick top 5. There's all of these kids at quarterback. We got to see what we've got. But to come up with an organizational plan where you tell Eli that you're going to start, then sit, who leaves that meeting saying, let's sell that to Eli, and he's going to buy it as anything other than an insult? It makes no sense. And then the guy who had his jaw broke, I'm sorry.
Who left that meeting thinking that was a good idea?
I don't know.
And then the guys who have created this mess, that's the bottom line. And they have disrespected. McAdoo has disrespected Eli for 2 years. You know why? Because he's an easy guy to disrespect because he doesn't have any ego. He's the rare top player, the rare big leader, NFL Man of the Year, 2-time MVP in the Super Bowl, who doesn't have an ego. That's very rare. We know that. But that's who he is. He never reacts to criticism. He never has. He is the ultimate gentleman. But what he is, he's got a lot of John Wayne in him. He is so tough. And so mentally tough, he's always there in the big spot. He will always be there for a team in the big spot.
Last one for you, Mike. When you came on, you were promoting that 30 for 30 about you and Mad Dog, and this was about obviously in the summer, and I asked you when you go off the air mid-December how many wins the Jets have. They're going to have more than the Giants. And now the Giants are sitting Eli Manning using the old Jet quarterback. So the question is, have the Giants become the Jets, Mike?
They have, at least for this year. Hopefully it is a short-term malady. And let me say this. I actually think the Jets are on the right course. I think McCagnon is the right architect. The one thing he's got to do, everybody's got a blind spot. He's got one for Hackenberg. He's got to get past it and go get himself a quarterback. He needs to hit the home run on the quarterback. If he does that, I think Jet fans, of which I know you're one, are going to be very happy with him. I don't know about Bowles yet. I'm unsold. I like that they come out and play hard. I like some of the game plans. His in-game stuff is very weak. That he needs to be more forceful. I've talked to Todd about that. I really think he can get that way. I think he's a 50-50 deal. I could go either way on him, but I think McCagnon is a given, and I think they have a defensive infrastructure that is terrific. Those young safeties are wonderful. I think they're building a good defense. I think the offensive line's being built. They need a home run hitter at wide receiver, but I think they're very close to being pretty good. Now, the Giants, you know what? It's going to be very interesting. It's not their way to do a quick about face, but I think this year has been so bad, so off the charts bad from what it was supposed to be, that I think everybody's going to walk the plank.
Well, if you and I don't speak before you sign off, Mike, I just want to say on behalf of anybody who does what I'm doing for this show, speaking it to a radio mic, talking sports, and calling and getting callers and batting it around with real people every day, I say thank you. And then as a Staten Islander, born in Brooklyn, raised in Staten Island, on behalf of everybody in New York City, in the metropolitan area, thank you.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you. It's very, very, very generous of you. I appreciate it. Have a nice holiday, and thanks very much.
You bet. That's Mike Francesa. Same to you and yours.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.